Hello, welcome everybody. This is the Other Love course, and my name is Petra Lohmeyer, and I welcome you here. Thank you for coming. I don't take it lightly. I know that we all have a lot to do, but maybe I can give you some real insights into what you can do if you do not find the love that you need around you from the people that you currently want to get them from. Because there are a lot of different ways that you can get love. And there's what we've done in this course so far. Let me just review this. Is we had a short-term solution, basically what you do when you not get the love that you need in the short term. Then you have quite a few different options of what you can do. Most people don't see them because they only look at the one thing that they don't get. And I just wanted to give you the option because every one of us needs love and every one of us needs connection. And if we don't get it, sometimes we use things that are unfortunate in order to get that love and connection, which is not very healthy. So I wanted to give you some healthy alternatives so you can do in the short term what you need to do until you can fix the problem in the long term. And then the third session. So the first session was an intro. The second session was the short-term solutions. The third session was an analysis to take a look at what's the problem. Is it something within me? Is it something within the environment? What can I do? And we looked at that in detail in the last session. If you have not done the few sessions before, I strongly recommend that you take a look at them. And there will be a link at the end of this course again, how you can get to this. And now it is time to take a look at the long-term solutions. What can you do? Now, the first thing you will obviously do is look at the analysis. What is the cause of the current problem? If it is something within you, good news. It may be something that is quite easy to fix. It may not necessarily be nice for you to fix it. You may not like it, but it may be quite easy to fix. If it is something in the environment, you may have to move. Let's take a look at that. If you do need to move, decide on the timeline. Is there something you need to complete or learn or to contribute before you move? If so, is that under your control, or do you have to set yourself a deadline that you will move no matter what, even if that thing that you want to do is not complete? So let's take a look at all of this in detail. If it is something within you, again, good news, it is the easiest and the least disruptive because you don't have to move jobs, relationships, or location. You just have to work on yourself. It could be that you need to apologize, for example, if it was a one-time event that turned everybody against you or that you lost that person that you would really like to have that relationship with. It could be that you could apologize, even if it was not your fault. You could apologize for even the confusion you cause, because sometimes it is not your fault, but there is, a disconnect between people. And if you apologize, you just open up the field, and then the other person may apologize too, maybe not, but at least you are on a speaking relationship again. If you need to gain some skills, which may be the case, you can take a look at personal development or influence skills. Look at the relevant course. I can recommend several courses that I've taken myself that I know are very good for certain things, like Tony Robbins' UPW. It's coming up from the 22nd to the 25th of October, and this year it is virtual because of the COVID-19, which is actually good in certain respects, because you don't have to fly there, you don't have to get a hotel, you don't have to get a car. You can just stay within the comfort of your own home and you get the entire program. All the stuff that is usually done at a normal UPW in your own home. Your family can watch, so you don't have to explain afterwards what you were doing and why you've drunk the Kool-Aid and stuff. They can watch, they can participate too. You don't have to pay any more. That is something Tony has said several times before. And it has a few really, really, really good tools in it, like NLP tools, for example, that deal with confidence, dealing with trauma, working up past triggers. Every time I went to one of the UPWs, and I went to, I think, 9 of the live events, something has come up for me. And for some reason, it was always solved on that UPW. And a lot of times I didn't even know that I had that issue. I wasn't aware. It was somewhere in my subconscious, and suddenly it came up and it was solved. So that is a wonderful thing if one of the problems, for example, maybe your own confidence, because sometimes if people bully you, for example, it is because they feel weakness, especially bullies. If they feel weakness, then they will exploit it. And if they suddenly feel that confidence within you, they will not go at you anymore because it is too dangerous. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to be threatening or anything. But if you have that confidence, they will just back off. That can be one of the areas. Or if you know somebody who has that issue, your child, for example, there are also, I believe, youth camps that Tony does. So there's a lot of things you can do there. Also, if you have past traumas, there are NLP tools, neuro-linguistic programming, that can help you deal with these traumas, that they don't come up anymore, that they don't trigger you anymore. Very, very useful. Relationship tools, he also does relationships, and business tools are also there. If you need leadership tools, for example, to lead your people or lead the environment around you, that is also something that I can really recommend. I've been to UPW several times now. Just to disclose this, I do have an affiliate link. So if you click on the link there, bit.ly/UPW360, I will probably get some money from it. But I do really believe in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone several times. And I paid 8 out of 9 times. I accrued once, but the other times I did pay. So, this is really something that I believe in. The other thing, relationship tools, if you are only after relationship tools and not leadership and, business mastery and all these other things as well, there are a couple of other things, other options as well. I find, especially if you find yourself at levels between purple and blue, we covered that, I think, in the introduction and in the first session. It's 70% of the population. So there's a good chance that you are somewhere around there. If you are in that region, there's a couple of other programs that may be right for you. One is Robbins Madonna's training, where Tony Robbins partnered with a person called Chloe Madanas, who is a family therapist. And they train coaches, but you can also go through the program and basically coach yourself. In a way, while you're watching the films, it's Tony Robbins interventions, most of it. You can see, how things apply to you, and that may be helpful. Another one is some of the people that Tony Robbins and Chloe Madanas partnered up, Mark and Magali Pesha. Magali is Chloe's daughter. They've got their own company called Strategic Intervention, and you can also do this. They do quite a lot of things that you will find in RMT and Robbins Madonna's training will also be taught by them in Strategic Intervention. Then if you're looking at some marriages yourself, there's 2 people, Stacy and Paul, that come highly recommended. Now, both of these programs with regards to relationship tools are designed to keep you in that relationship. So it's a little bit one-sided, because sometimes it may be that the relationship is simply not right for you or not right for the other person. And it would actually be better if you move on. These programs will be designed to keep you in that relationship, and through all kinds of subtle things. So if that is not really, and you're not sure if that is really what you should be doing, you may be looking at some other things as well. But just as a bit of a warning there. But if you want to keep that relationship and you think that relationship really works, there's just a few things to work out. These 2 things seem to be, what other people think is really great programs and have quite a track record of keeping people together. So I think Stacy and Paul come under relationship transformers, and I think it is no, not LinkedIn, it's the other one, not Facebook, Instagram, right? Okay, so that is if it is something within you. If it is not something within you, or not exclusively something within you, or it is something that is an incompatibility within you that you do not want to change because, for example, you have values that you don't want to change because you do believe in it, and if you would change, it would basically drag you down, if you would adjust to your environment. If it is the environment, then you will need to change the environment. That is a little bit more time and work intensive. The first thing I would do is decide on the timing. Should you move ASAP, or is there something you need to do to complete, to learn, or to contribute first? Because sometimes there is. You may decide that studying law is not for you, for example, but you're almost finished with it. In that case, even if you think it is not for you, it may be a good idea to finish it anyway. And I'll get back to that when we discuss this in more detail. The second point I would look at is, are there other people affected? Even if you need to move ASAP and they have hurt you, how can you arrange to move, the relationship, or the job or the location as fair to them as possible, and be as fair to them as possible? If there's something you need to complete, do you need to set yourself a deadline? Because if you don't, it is just so hard that you will never move on. Let's go through each one of these in turns. Even if you need to move ASAP as soon as possible, how can you arrange the move as fair to others as possible? The idea is, don't leave a mess. Don't make this a revenge. Leave your house in order if they give you a chance. Sometimes they don't give you a chance. But if there's any way they can do things the right way, please do so, because it will also fall back on you afterwards. And you will feel better about yourself. Like a job, for example. Work the redundancy period or the resignation period and still give your all. I can remember that I left a job once and it was not under good circumstances. And I still worked through the entire 3 months and also warned them when things went wrong and took responsibility for it. And it may not help me in that particular job, but I'm pretty sure that it was passed on afterwards, because otherwise I wouldn't have gotten all these other jobs that I got afterwards, and people would have been a lot more cautious with me. Do a good handover. I remember the job before that. I did a handover document. It was very thorough. And 3 years later, I heard from a new hire that we had who came from the same company that they had basically rewritten it as a manual for the entire team. And I had been praised apparently in the team for producing this handover document, and I didn't even know about it. So you can leave a good legacy afterwards and you can feel good about yourself. Finish the project you were hired for. Don't just leave in the middle of a project just because there's one person or several persons who make your life really difficult. Because sometimes that will happen. They will feel threatened by you. It may be that they think that you create a beachhead, for example. Even if that is not true, they will make your life difficult. They may want to derail you in order to derail the project. But if you let yourself be derailed, you hurt other people, because you're working for the company, not for them, right? You sometimes, even if nobody in the company is actually helping you, you may want to finish the project anyway, simply because if you don't, then broader sections of society may get hurt. If it is an important company, it's an important project for that company, and they may go down, for example, or they may lose a lot of money, they may pass that on and other people may get hurt. So think about that. Relationship. Make sure everybody's cared for. So if you leave your wife, for example, or you leave your husband, don't just leave your children in a mess, because they will be hurting anyway. It may be better for all concerned, but make sure that they're cared for. Even if you have some real issues with the other person, it's not the children's fault. There is apparently somebody out there who also focuses on amicable divorces, and that is obviously not an easy thing, because there's a lot of hurt involved. I would contact Dean Graziosi. Deals with a lot of, he deals with education, is in the education business. He also deals with motivation and with sales and real estate. But the last time I heard him talk about this topic, he said that he knows some people who deal with amicable divorces. So I would, if that is something that you want to do, I would contact him and contact his team, and he may pass you on, because I don't know, he never said who it was. So he may pass you on to that person, then you can find out. I believe that he did it, and now initially it was a real problem, with his wife. He thought that he was going to lose his children. But the way it worked out, his new wife is now fixing the old wife's hair because the old wife wants to go to a date. So it could not be, better. The other story that he told was that his old wife came to help his new wife deal with a sick daughter, for example. And this is the kind of thing that you want. It's not something that's going to be easy, but it is possible. If other people have done it, you can do it too. Location. Who relies on you at the old location? Sometimes there are people who have nothing to do with whatever is going on around you, who are just not strong enough to be your support or to defend you against the others, but they really rely on you. make sure that they're okay when you leave. Make sure that there's something you can do for them. Give them ample notice, for example, that they can rely on somebody else. Can you find a replacement? I had it when people were relying on me during COVID-19 to pay them rent, for example. That was not something that was discussed before. It was not something that maybe they had a right to rely on, but they did, and there was nothing they could do because they were caught in this thing just as I was, and suddenly there were no tourists anymore that were coming, and I was the only one who was providing the money. So I was trying to get somebody else in. I did get somebody else in. I don't know if that person stayed. I hope he did. There's a few things that you can do. Location. If someone relies on you, give them advance warning, as I said before. Again, only because there's a witch hunt doesn't mean that they are not effed when you leave. Sometimes they have no idea what you've been doing for them because somebody else took the credit. Sometimes they have no idea how much work there was involved. Sometimes they have no idea how efficient you were because they saw you come at 9, leave at 6, while other people were staying 2 or 3 hours longer, always complaining about the work. And it turns out that you did 4 times the work they did. You were just more efficient. Sometimes people find that out a little late and they lose a lot of money. Try to give them as much handover as you can, and maybe it will be passed on as well. Now, the other question is, should you move immediately, or is there something that you need to complete, learn, or contribute first? Now, examples are, as I said before, if you're at university and you're just 2 semesters before finishing and the whole thing takes, I don't know, 6, 7 years, or maybe even 10 for some people, don't just leave. It may be very tempting because you're so sick of it. I certainly was very sick of studying law when I did, and I knew I was never going to work in it. Turns out I did, but 6 or 7 years later, and then for 10 years. But I never thought that was going to happen. Well, turns out it was a really good idea that I did finish the degree. I wasn't very happy about it. I wasn't very motivated, but I did finish the degree. I did finish it with a decent grade. And others didn't because they found another job that paid well. So they just took the job. Turns out years later, they really, really regretted it because they never finished it when they did. They weren't able to later. They weren't able to do the training later because it had to be finished within 3 years, and they never did. So they basically lost the chance of having that degree, and that degree was the prerequisite for them being promoted. And that is something they always regretted, and you don't want to be in that position. If it is just another year to put on top of your education, just do it, even if you don't like it. Sometimes you just have to swallow the toad, right? If you sell the house, try to sell the house before you leave. A friend of mine, he didn't. He just moved and tried to sell the house from abroad, and then he lost a lot of money because he couldn't find a seller, and then he ran out of money, and he basically had to sell it at, I think, 100K less than he could have gotten. Are your skills in an environment needed because you're not like the others? For example, I worked in an industry that I really, really didn't fit into at all. My values were completely different than the values of the people there. But that was exactly why I was needed at that point, because some of the issues with values brought them to a point where everything was basically exploding. And it needed people like me to come in and fix it, because the people with values there don't usually fix things when they go bad. They turn on each other. They try to position. They try to put themselves into a position where they don't get sacked, but somebody else gets sacked. There's a lot of politics. They concentrate 80% on politics and maybe 20 or maybe just 5% on fixing the problem. So the problem doesn't get fixed, and it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that the company goes down. And that would have been a massive problem one time when I got into such an environment. So I saw it as my duty to stay there and try to fix things, and things were fixed. And then things went up again, and it was okay. So sometimes you are in an environment for a reason, even if you don't really fit into it. Is there a problem there to teach you endurance? For example, would you lose self-respect if you left? An example would be a marathon. Political environments, like I just said, Take a look at the movie The Devil Wears, I think it's The Devil Wears Prada. I wrote here The Devil Sells Prada. The Devil Wears Prada. You will see it is not a nice working environment, but it gave the person who went through it a real advantage afterwards. Sometimes you just have to stick with it for a while. Don't stick with it forever. Don't stay there forever. That's a mistake some people make. They get into an attitude of learned helplessness and never get out of the environment, and it destroys them. But sometimes just put yourself into the position to learn something and then leave, and be honest about it. And a lot of times people will expect that, especially in those environments. Is there someone worth sticking it out for? It may not be the right environment for you. It may not be worth it for you, but somebody else is there that you should really help. Even if that person doesn't give you the return that you're after, they may be worth it as a person, but they also may have a mission that is important to you. And if you would just leave and you would let people basically destroy them, or you would leave them in the lurch, it would be a really bad thing, not just for him or her, but for you, for everybody involved, basically. So sometimes it is worth sticking out for somebody else, even if you don't necessarily get out of it what you wanted. And sometimes you do get things that you didn't expect to get afterwards, simply because they will be very giving people, but don't expect it. Sometimes it's just right to do the right thing. Now, if there's something you need to complete, do you need to set yourself a deadline? Now, I had it, for example, when I sold my house in England. I sold my house because of Brexit. It was incredibly political. And then I sold the house, and that became incredibly political. And I never knew if the buyer, for example, was somebody who was a plant by the locals who was going to pull out shortly before. And, you know, things got delayed and got delayed, got delayed. It may not have been her fault, but sometimes you just don't know if things are so political. So I set myself a deadline. And the deadline was as soon as I had the money, enough money to buy the ferry ticket, because at that point I had run out of money, because that selling the house had taken 11 months. While it was incredibly political, I couldn't get any new projects done because foreigners just wouldn't get any projects at that point. People were really afraid of what was happening, and I still had bills to pay, and that house wouldn't sell. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to leave. I bought the ferry ticket, and I thought, okay, I'll leave. I'll try to do everything I can to sell that house before. But if not, I'll just leave. And then it's going to have to be sold from abroad. I bought the ferry ticket. The house sold 3 days before the ferry ticket. Anna said it was 2 hours of the completion was 2 hours before I actually had to vacate the house, which was completely not what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be completion a week before I leave the house. I put a professional cleaner in it, and everything works out well. And I literally only had 2 hours to move out. And it was probably the most stressful thing I ever did. I had most of my stuff piled into the caravan, at least the stuff that I didn't throw away, piled into my caravan, which was totally overloaded. And I spent the next 5 days going to recycle centers and throw stuff out because I didn't have the time in the 2 hours to sort through the stuff that I hadn't already put into storage or somewhere else. It was much more than I had anticipated. I had anticipated much more time. Sometimes you have to give yourself that deadline. And I left, and it was the best thing I could have done at the time. Even if it's a natural deadline, set yourself a deadline for the move thereafter. If the deadline is the exam, for example, and then you want to do something. The problem is if you wait for making plans until you're done, basically, that's when fear sets in, because suddenly you realize, oh my God, I'm free. Now I can do it. And oh my God, what if I fail? Still plan when you think that being free, like being free of the exams of that study that you don't want to do anymore, is the best thing that could ever happen to you. If your freedom and joy is in the future for you, make your plans then. Because once your exams are done, you may not be able to see what you saw before because you're just too afraid. If your fear of change is really great, you can use a metaphor. Like I moved to Canada, for example, but I had already moved twice across a continent without anybody on the other side, without anybody who would be able to help me. And this time I was doing it with pets as well. So I was ending up in a hotel for 3 weeks with pets, hoping that I would find an apartment in time that would allow me to have pets and then find a job. I was already in debt because things had gone much longer than I had anticipated with the visa. And I was afraid. I was so afraid of the other side. It was like this big black dark hole, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. And the way I got through it is I went skydiving, because once you jump out of that plane and you basically sit in air and there's nothing but air around you, and you just hope that that parachute is going to open, you can also fly into Canada. So sometimes you can use some physical experience in order to get you around psychological hangups. Make a project plan. If you decide you move out, even if you, especially if you cannot move immediately, make a project plan of how you want to move around things. So while you're in state, again, don't do it once you're free. Make it already when you think, oh my God, being free is going to be so great. Because at that point, you will still anticipate really good things to happen. You won't go into this fear mode where you suddenly freeze and don't know what to do anymore. Also, there's different ways of making project plans. Now, I've got a course out there which has different names. I had it on mastermind.com. It may not be there anymore by the time you see this video. It was called Building Legends, but it may be there in future again. I do have it on my personal website, though. It's www.nibel.co.uk/job videos. That is where you can find a course. It is entitled So You Need a New Job, but it can also be any kind of move, any kind of change you want to make. You can also use that system. It's a system that shows you how to plan, how to experiment with things, how to engage, how to execute. There are a few, I think there's one video on project planning in there, which is quite helpful because it puts in there some of the things that I have done, some of the things that I discovered when I was doing things like this that can get you around roadblocks. Now, it's a little primer. I'm showing you one of the slides of the video, for example, here. Top tips is an acronym which is used in one of the phases of what you go through in the planning stage. And this just shows you that you don't have to do everything on your to-do list. You know, a lot of people do a to-do list and then think that they have to check everything up. But sometimes your to-do list is alternatives. You know, you've got alternative ways of preparation here, for example, alternative ways of transport or invitation. You can put all of those on your to-do list, but then decide on the best path. You know, sometimes the path you want, for example, is not necessarily the path that makes sense in the end, and then you will just want to use an alternative. Another thing for this is, for example, a picture of how a project plan, even in massive companies, sometimes looks like. I mean, there are project planning software is out there, and I've got it too. But even big companies sometimes still do it in Excel. So this was done in Excel. So if you don't have this big project planning experience and the right software, you can do it in Excel. What you see here is, for example, opening an office. You can use it for personal planning too, but this is for business planning. Yeah. Now, so the blue ones, uh, at the top, you've got the days, right? The blue little circles is how long it's probably going to take. That is how it should be, how long it should be taking. The yellow ones are contingency days, when things don't go as planned, which you should always put in because sometimes some things just go wrong. And the red arrows are, that's called the critical path. Basically, it says if this doesn't happen, the next thing can't happen either. So you have to be able to finish that one phase, otherwise you won't get the other one. In this case, it was exam passed. You have to pass the exam, otherwise you can't get the license, because without passing the exam, you can't get the license, for example. The next one was get the license, open the office. You can't open an office if you don't have a license. So you can use this kind of thing. I go into much, much more detail in the course, and it may be of use for you to take a look at it. Just to show you what this acronym stands for, because I've got acronyms for all the 6 different phases, just so that you see that there's actually something behind this. So this is to-do list is the first thing. The outcome was the first slide that I showed you, that you prioritize for the outcome. This is P, prioritize. You take a look at the timeline, the impact, and you do a pre-mortem, and you need to be able to be subtle about the whole thing and be flexible. So this is short intro in the course again. So basically what I showed you there is engage, top tips. This is the acronym, but I've got 6 different phases and different acronyms there. And each one of, and I used acronyms so you don't forget one of the different stages, because each one of these can really derail you if you don't do them. And I learned that the hard way a lot of times. I'm really proud of that course, because it is 20 years of experience behind it. I think it could really help you. Take a look at it. There is, I believe, yeah, you can get it at Job Videos. There's also, if you go to www.nivelle.co.uk/videos, you will also see a link to a free webinar where you get much, much more explanation than I just gave you, which is free. And then you can decide if you want to do this. If this was helpful to you, please do share to other people. If you have questions about the content, feel free to put it into the Facebook group, Nivelle Getting Love. Feel free to share your experiences with this, and share your experiences in general and with not getting love, with how it came about, what you did to fix it. And let us know what questions you'd like to have answered, because we may do this course again and we may change it a little bit and adjust it to what people need. And I look forward to seeing you in the future at some point, and maybe I'll see you in this course, maybe I'll see you in a live event. And we have one more session afterwards just to wrap it all up and to integrate everything. And thank you for being here today.